Hello knitters and Happy New Year! I'm Barbara Benson and I am an independent knitwear designer who also likes to make videos here on my YouTube channel, Watch Barbara Knit. If you would like to know more about my knitwear designs, please check in the description below and there you will find a link to my Ravelry page where you can find patterns to purchase and knit up yourself. Also in the link below you will find a link to the Watch Barbara Knit's Facebook group, a place for us to hang out and continue the conversation that we have started here on YouTube. Of course, I love hearing from you in the comments below the video also, but on Facebook it is a closed group and we can also share pictures. So win-win. I wanted to start the year off answering a request. A recent comment from a Valerie C said that she has heard me talk about slip stitch a lot, but really didn't know how to do a slip stitch. What exactly is that? So I have made this video and it is how to do slip stitch. Specifically, I'm talking about slip stitch color work, and even more incrementally, like smaller, is the mosaic style of slip stitch color work. It is literally knitting stripes and slipping stitches. One of the things that makes it easy and distinctive is that you don't carry any yarn. You're only knitting with the one strand of yarn. In stranded knitting or Fair Isle style knitting, you are actually holding two or more strands of yarn and carrying all the colors across every row or round. And that gets into something called yarn management and managing your floats. But with slip stitch style color work, you're only ever working with one strand of yarn at a time, and you switch them at the beginning of your row around, and it's the slip stitches that create the color work. I have written a whole book about combining mosaic style color work with lace, and it's called Mosaic and Lace Knits. I will put a link to it in the description below. So I'm obviously a little bit fixated on this technique. So here is the how-to video. This is a pattern from my book, and it is the pattern I've included. That's if you just want to learn how to do straight up mosaic. And this is the one I show people, try to explain how this style of slip stitch color work works. You are knitting two round or row stripes, okay? And so for this row, these two rows, rounds, you are knitting with this multicolor yarn. So looking at these stitches, the way you would read and how the pattern would read is knit 3, slip 1, knit 3, slip 1, all the way around. So we are knit 2 rows in the white, then a row of knit 3, slip 1 in the multicolor, and then knit 2 more rounds of the white. And what happens is when you slip that stitch, you're pulling the second row here. You can really see it here. This is your first round. This is your second round. When you were knitting here and you slipped it, it elongates that stitch and pulls it up and across the stripe you created, and it gives you this illusion that you're doing fancy color work when in fact you're just knitting stripes and slipping stitches. You can see on the inside there's no real floats. You're not carrying both colors of yarn across it. It's just pick one up, and let me see if I can find, there we go. You're just carrying the yarn up the rows or rounds. And so this is a very simple mosaic or slip stitch color work pattern. And this is the same slip 1, knit 3, but just alternating, because this one is slip 1, knit 3, and then you're knitting all of these and slipping this one. So it's a different combination. By combining the slips and the knits, you can get interesting different patterns. Now, what do I mean by slipping a stitch? The slip stitch is quite frankly the easiest stitch that you can do in knitting. It is even easier than the knit stitch. Come here, needle. I have knit a bit to get going, and you can see this is the knit 3, slip 1, knit 3, slip 1. We're doing just a 2-stitch garter edge just to get it anchored down. And now we are on slip 1 is the first one. It's going to be slip 1, knit 3. To slip a stitch, pulling it up here, you insert your right hand needle purlwise. And what purlwise means is you're inserting it as if you are going to purl your stitch, and then you simply slide it off the left hand needle. You are transferring it from the left hand needle to the right hand needle without knitting it. Now, the only thing you have to remember, well, 2 things. You have to remember to do it purlwise. If you slip knitwise, you actually will twist your stitch. You see how that did right there? See how it twisted? Then when you eventually knit into it, it will twist like that, and that is not desirable. So you slip it purlwise, and you slip it with this yarn that you're knitting with held on the wrong side of the work. You do not want those floats to be visible. If you slipped it with your yarn on the right side, you're going to get that little carried yarn across your stitch, and it will mess up your color work. Now, there are certain patterns that have you do that deliberately, but that is not what we're doing right now. So, insert purlwise, yarn held behind to the wrong side of the work, and slip it. So slip 1, knit 3. 1, 2, 3. Slip 1, purlwise. Just transfer it, that's it. Knit 3. 1, 2, 3. Slip 1, insert purlwise, means from right to left. Slip it over. That's it. 1, 2, 3. And then to frame it, I have added 1 extra stitch, so we're going to slip that last stitch just to frame it. It is a partial repeat, and then there you go. You can't really see what's going on here, but if you look, you have both colors of yarn on your needle, but the red ones are the ones that I knit, and the silver ones are the ones that were slipped. And you can see it's directly in the column up from here. The way this works is you alternate how the 3s and 1s go. I'm going to flip it over. We're going to do our garter stitch edge. 1, 2. Now, you're going to, when you see this opposite color, the color you're not working it, this is our active color, it's the yarn we're knitting with. This is the inactive color. You're going to move this active color to the wrong side, to the front. Insert your needle purlwise, slip it off. Then you're going to, if you were going to be knitting in garter, you'd move it back to the front. But since we're working in purling, the next thing you do is just purl that stitch. Purl, 2, 3, then slip that purlwise, but you can see how this yarn is running in front of the stitch, and that's with yarn in front is the instruction. But I find it easier to think of that you always want that yarn on the wrong side because you don't want to see it. So then knit 2, 3, slip that 1 stitch, purl, 2, I said knit earlier, I meant purl, purl, and then we come to the, see, it's in the different color, so we don't want to work that. We move the yarn to front, slip that. Now we're going to go to knit, so we have to move the yarn to the back again and knit those 2 stitches. And there we go. We've now done 2 rows in the red, See? And we've got these slip stitches on the needle. The next 2 rows in this particular mosaic pattern boop, are just knit your stockinette. So you're knit one and purl the other. So we're just going to knit. And see, now I'm knitting into those stitches that I slipped previously. And that creates the color patterning. It's pretty darn cool. I call it cheater color work because, as you can see, we're just knitting stripes and slipping stitches. Last 2 stitches. And there you go. You can see how we've built this up. Here, I'm going to squinch it together a bit. See, those are the stitches that we slipped on those 2 rows. And you can see how it shifts. So this one is what we just did. Slip 1, knit 3, slip 1, knit 3, slip 1, knit 3, slip 1. Then 2 rows, and then it's knit 2, slip 1, knit 3, slip 1, knit 3, slip 1, knit 2. And what that is I'm slipping that center. Since we're doing segments of 3, I'm slipping that center to make them alternate. Isn't that cool? Now, you could work this in stockinette the way I've shown you, or you can knit back the return rows and you can work it in garter. Mosaic, you get different effects, either thing you do. But that is, I said, it's the simplest color work, and the slip stitch is quite possibly the simplest stitch you can do in knitting. I wanted to show you what a chart for mosaic might look like. This is a traditional or classic mosaic chart as created by Barbara Walker. And this is a representation of what I just knit for you. And she functions on a couple assumptions. She assumes that before you can slip a stitch, you have to have a foundation row. So that's not represented on the chart. And then the other thing is these charts do not have the return rows or the second rows, depending on if you're working the round. So the way you would read this is you're working with the gray yarn, or your color whatever yarn, and then it's knit 2, and when you hit a box that's in the opposite color, that means you just know because it's the different color you're supposed to slip it with the yarn held to the wrong side. And then knit 3, and then when you hit the second color, then you slip that. And when you finish this row, and you can see this is exactly what I knit, so this is 3 separate repeats. Knit 1, slip 1, knit 3, and then over here you can see, look at these, that is the edging stitch. It's not included in your repeats. And then knit 2 to work the next row around. To work the next row, if you're knitting flat, you then work it from left to right, so you work it backwards, and you either are knitting in stockinette or you're knitting in garter. So either you're going to knit them or you're going to purl them, but again still know that when it's in the color you're working in, that means you work that stitch, and if it's in the opposing color, then you slip that stitch with the yarn held to the wrong side of the work. And then you can see we have this that's just that solid color because there's no slitch stitches, so you work it that way and then you work it that way. If you're working in the round, you would just knit both of your 2 row or 2 round stripes from right to left. And then again, so if you are ever presented with a chart that looks like this, just know that each of these chart rows represents a stripe, which is either 2 rows or 2 rounds. Now, when I do mosaic charts, I make them look like this. I just don't want you guys having to guess. So this shows your foundation row. So you've cast on and then you knit 2 rows. It shows you that. And then you've got your edging. So this is showing the garter stitch edging that I was doing because this little bump stands for knit on the wrong side. And then instead of just leaving that opposing color blank and you just having to know that you have to slip it, I put the slip stitch symbol in it. You can see over here, these are the symbols, and slip is this V because it pulls up a V. So this then tells you knit 2, slip 1, knit 3, slip 1, knit 3, slip 1, instead of just assuming that you know you're slipping that other color, and then instead of assuming that you know you have to work it backwards or work it a second time, work that row 2 times, you can read it backwards. So this is what a mosaic chart in one of my patterns is going to look like, actually, except for what we would do here is, let's go, this is my charting software. We would delete columns. There we go. Oh, and now my borders are all messy. Delete, delete. And actually, I wouldn't even have these here. That is simply what the chart would look like. Though you're not going to be way over here. Bloop. This denotes that this is definitely only worked once. And then this box here is your repeat. So you just know that you repeat it from side to side and you can repeat it vertically. There we go. Valerie, I hope that this answered most of your questions. As you can see, you learned how to do the slip stitch, and you don't have to only use slip stitch in Colorwork. The slip stitch itself can be incorporated into just creating a texture. It can be a lot of fun, and I actually have incorporated somewhat in just plain lace, and it distorts the lace a little bit differently, but I think I hammered home the main thing about the slip stitch is you're always slipping it purlwise, and unless they tell you otherwise, which happens sometimes for textural effects, you're slipping with the yarn that runs that isn't being knit into that slip stitch. It goes on the wrong side of your work. Now there are stitches like linen stitch and woven stitch that deliberately tell you to move the yarn to the front, but it will tell you. If it doesn't tell you otherwise, assume you A, are slipping it purlwise, and B, you're carrying that yarn on the wrong side of the work. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please click that like button and share it with your friends. If you would like to be notified whenever I upload a new video, please subscribe to my videos and my channel and select notifications. Thank you so much.